Hello Midnights. We hope you enjoy our stories. Next one, 10 legendary witches, figures of power, mystery, and transformation. Let us know where you are listening from and don't forget to subscribe. From the dawn of human storytelling, whispers of the arcane and the extraordinary have captivated our collective imagination. At the heart of these tales, often shrouded in shadow and infused with potent mystique, stands the figure of the witch. But what, precisely, defines a witch? In its broadest sense, a witch is an individual, typically female, believed to possess and practice magical powers, often associated with supernatural forces, the manipulation of nature, healing arts, or forbidden knowledge. This definition, however, is a mere starting point, for the witch embodies a rich tapestry of cultural interpretations, from the feared sorceress wielding dark curses to the wise woman healing with herbs, from the rebellious outcast defying societal norms to the spiritual leader communing with unseen realms. Across millennia, these figures have transcended mere folklore to become potent archetypes. They reflect humanity's deepest fears of the unknown, our longing for control over destiny, and our complex relationship with female power and authority. They have been revered and reviled, celebrated and persecuted, often embodying profound transformation, both of themselves and of the worlds they inhabit. Here, we delve into the stories of 10 of the most legendary witches, exploring their origins, their deeds, their enduring legacy, and the deeper cultural significance they hold. From the ancient Mediterranean to the hallowed halls of Arthurian legend, from the chilling historical trials to the modern resurgence of spiritual practice, these powerful individuals illuminate the enduring fascination and profound impact of the witch on human history and consciousness. 1. Circe, Greek mythology. Circe, a prominent and enigmatic figure in Greek mythology, is more than just a powerful enchantress. She is a complex divine being, daughter of the sun god Helios and the Oceanid nymph Circe. Residing on the mythical island of Aeaea, she is renowned for her profound knowledge of herbs, potent potions, and her uncanny ability to perform transfiguration, most notably turning humans into animals. Her most famous encounter, detailed in Homer's Odyssey, sees her transforming Odysseus's crew into swine after they unwisely feast on her food. However, Circe is not purely malevolent. After Odysseus, aided by the god Hermes, resists her magic, a respectful and even romantic relationship develops between them. She eventually aids him, providing crucial advice and warnings about his perilous journey home, including how to navigate the sirens and the monsters Scylla and Charybdis. Circe embodies the dangerous allure of the unknown and the untamed power of the divine feminine. She represents a force that challenges heroic endeavors and patriarchal structures, yet also serves as a source of profound wisdom and guidance. Her story highlights themes of transformation, temptation, the perils of hubris, and the potential for a powerful woman to command respect and influence even the greatest heroes. She is a liminal figure, existing on the edge of the known world, wielding magic that can both destroy and enlighten. How was she known as a witch? Circe was recognized as a powerful enchantress through her inherent divine lineage and her overtly displayed abilities. In Greek mythology, characters often derive their powers from their parentage or a divine gift, but Circe actively demonstrated her capabilities. Her transformation of Odysseus's men into swine, a visible and shocking display of power, immediately identified her. She also frequently employed her signature wand, the rhabdos, as a focal tool for directing her energy. Beyond transfiguration, she brewed sophisticated potions and elixirs, understood and could communicate with all living creatures, animals, plants, mortals, and even possessed a siren's daughter ability to influence minds with her voice, a gift from her mother. She was not accused in the historical sense, but rather acknowledged and feared for her manifest magical might. Reasons behind her powers/status. Her status as a witch stemmed directly from her divine parentage and her innate connection to chthonic and solar powers, Helios, the sun god, and Circe, an Oceanid, linking her to both the sky and the earth/sea. This heritage granted her extraordinary magical abilities, deep insights into natural phenomena, and knowledge of arcane secrets, particularly concerning herbs and transfiguration. Homer also depicts her as a diligent student of magic, suggesting she honed her inherited talents through practice and experimentation. She was a goddess of magic, not a human practitioner, and her powers were a natural extension of her divine nature, existing beyond the realm of mortal comprehension or control. 2. Medea, Greek mythology. Medea, a truly formidable and tragic figure from Greek mythology, is a sorceress, princess of Colchis, and granddaughter of the sun god Helios, making her a cousin to Circe. Her narrative is an epic saga of intense passion, betrayal, and devastating magic, primarily chronicled in Euripides' play Medea and Apollonius of Rhodes' Argonautica. She falls deeply, almost obsessively, in love with the hero Jason when he arrives in Colchis seeking the Golden Fleece. Driven by this love, she betrays her own family and homeland, using her formidable magical powers, which include potent spells, brewing poisons, and commanding monstrous creatures, to help Jason overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles and secure the fleece. This aid comes at a terrible cost, including the murder of her own brother. However, Medea's story takes a dark turn when Jason abandons her and their children for Glauce, the princess of Corinth. Her subsequent revenge is one of the most chilling and iconic acts in Greek drama. Consumed by rage and heartbreak, she orchestrates the fiery deaths of Glauce and her father, Creon, using magically poisoned gifts. In the ultimate act of vengeance against Jason, she tragically murders their own children. Medea embodies the destructive potential of magic fueled by extreme emotion. She is a stark reminder of the tragic consequences of unchecked power, emotional turmoil, and the profound injustice of betrayal, cementing her status as one of antiquity's most terrifying and unforgettable sorceresses. How was she known as a witch? Medea was known as a witch through her undeniable and spectacular feats of magic, which were always on display and often pivotal to the plot. From the moment she appeared in the Argonautica, her magical prowess was clear. She gave Jason an ointment to protect him from dragon fire, charmed the sleepless dragon guarding the fleece with potent drugs and incantations, and even dismembered her own brother Apsyrtus to slow down her pursuers, scattering his body parts to force her father to collect them. Later, in Euripides' play, her acts of rejuvenating Jason's father Aeson, orchestrating the death of Peleus, Jason's uncle, through a deceptive magical rejuvenation, and her meticulously planned, magically enhanced revenge against Creon and Glauce left no doubt about her formidable powers. Her constant use of incantations, brewing of poisons and magical herbs, pharmaca, and her ultimate escape on a dragon-drawn chariot given by Helios were all clear public demonstrations of her extraordinary abilities. Reasons behind her powers/status: Medea's powers are attributed to her divine lineage, being the granddaughter of Helios. Her close association with Hecate, the goddess of magic, crossroads, and witchcraft, also plays a significant role. Medea is often depicted as a priestess or favored devotee of Hecate. She inherited a deep understanding of pharmaca, which could mean drugs, poisons, or magical herbs, and the complex rituals necessary to manipulate them. Her status as a foreigner, barbarian, from the wild, mythical land of Colchis, on the edge of the known Greek world, further connected her to ancient, potent, and often feared forms of magic, distinguishing her from the more orderly Olympian pantheon in traditional Greek society. Her magic was seen as both a divine gift and a learned, powerful craft. 3. The Witch of Endor. Biblical narrative. The Witch of Endor is a fascinating and controversial figure appearing in the Old Testament, specifically 1 Samuel 28. Her encounter with King Saul is a pivotal moment in the biblical narrative. Desperate for guidance before a crucial battle against the Philistines, and having been abandoned by God due to his disobedience, King Saul seeks out this necromancer in the village of Endor. This act is in direct violation of God's commandment against seeking advice from mediums and spirits of the dead. Despite her initial reluctance and fear of Saul, who had previously purged such practitioners, she ultimately agrees to his request to conjure the spirit of the deceased prophet Samuel. The witch successfully summons Samuel's spirit, who appears before Saul not as a gentle apparition but as a stern and wrathful figure, delivering a grim prophecy of Saul's impending death, the defeat of Israel, and the transfer of his kingdom to David. This biblical account is significant for several reasons. It acknowledges the ancient belief in the ability to communicate with the dead, though it frames it as forbidden and dangerous, and it highlights the power attributed to those who could facilitate such communication. The Witch of Endor represents forbidden knowledge, the desperation that can drive individuals to transgress divine laws, and the chilling effectiveness of certain forms of supernatural power, even within a monotheistic framework. How was she known as a witch? The Witch of Endor was known as a practitioner of necromancy and a woman with a familiar spirit, terms used in the Bible to describe individuals who could communicate with the dead or spirits. Her notoriety was such that even King Saul, who had previously cut off those that had familiar spirits, and the wizards, out of the land, knew where to find such a person in Endor when he desperately needed guidance. The narrative itself explicitly calls her a woman that hath a familiar spirit, 1 Samuel 28:7. The fact that she successfully summoned Samuel's spirit for Saul, a feat that even surprised her, as she cried out with a loud voice upon seeing Samuel, cemented her reputation as genuinely powerful in the eyes of the narrative, albeit in a capacity deemed unholy and forbidden by God. Reasons behind this knowledge/status. Her status likely stemmed from her demonstrated ability to perform necromancy and communicate with spirits, which would have been known within her local community. In ancient Near Eastern cultures, individuals who could mediate with the unseen world, whether for healing, divination, or communication with the deceased, were often sought out. Despite being condemned by Mosaic law, such practices persisted in ancient Israel and surrounding regions. The Bible's condemnation of familiar spirits implies that these practitioners were recognized and somewhat prevalent, indicating that individuals like her could develop a reputation for these forbidden arts. Her abilities, though not explicitly detailed in their acquisition, were viewed as a form of powerful, dangerous magic that defied divine decree. 4. Morgan Le Fay, Arthurian legend. Morgan Le Fay, a powerful and multifaceted sorceress in Arthurian legend, is one of the most enduring and complex characters in the lore. Often portrayed as King Arthur's half-sister, her character evolves significantly throughout the centuries of medieval and later literature. In earlier Welsh and Breton tales, she is often a benevolent figure, a powerful healer and goddess-like figure associated with Avalon. However, in later, more Christianized versions like Malory's La Morte d'Arthur, she transforms into a formidable, often antagonistic enchantress, driven by a desire for power and a deep-seated resentment towards Arthur and his court. Morgan is highly skilled in various magical arts, including healing, shape-shifting, often into birds or other animals, enchanting objects, and the manipulation of natural forces. She frequently schemes against Arthur, Guinevere, and Merlin, using her magic to create illusions, send cursed artifacts, or even attempt to usurp the throne. Yet, paradoxically, she is also one of the four queens who carried the mortally wounded Arthur to Avalon, suggesting a continued, albeit strained, connection and even a role in his ultimate fate. Morgan represents the shifting perceptions of female power in medieval Europe. She embodies both the alluring and dangerous aspects associated with magical abilities within the male-dominated chivalric world, symbolizing the untamed, sometimes rebellious, feminine force that could not be easily controlled or understood by a patriarchal society. Her duality makes her one of the most fascinating figures in Western mythology. How was she known as a witch? Morgan Le Fay's status as a witch, or sorceress, enchantress, was established through her consistent and overt use of magic throughout the Arthurian narratives, and by the acknowledgement of other characters within the legends. She was not accused in a trial but was known to possess magical abilities. Her powers were evident in her ability to cast potent illusions, for example, making knights appear headless or causing entire castles to vanish, to shapeshift into a serpent, a beautiful lady, or a hag, to control weather, to heal wounds, to create and empower magical objects, like enchanted swords or protective rings, and even to induce sleep or paralysis. Characters like Merlin, himself a master sorcerer, recognized her immense power and often warned Arthur about her machinations. Her reputation as a powerful enchantress was widespread within the legendary world. Reasons behind her powers/status. Her magical abilities are often attributed to her extensive studies, particularly under Merlin, or to an innate magical talent common in figures connected to the Fey world in ancient British pagan traditions. Her name itself, Le Fay, meaning the fairy, strongly links her to the supernatural realm. Her association with Avalon, a mystical island often depicted as a place of ancient magic, healing, and a gateway to the otherworld, further solidifies her connection to powerful, pre-Christian magical knowledge. In many versions, she is a diligent student of magic, consciously cultivating her powers, which differentiates her from those who might be seen as merely born with an innate ability. Her powers were also intertwined with her status as a noblewoman, giving her resources and a platform to wield influence both magically and politically. Her transformation into an antagonist in later tales also reflects the growing Christian discomfort with powerful, independent female figures practicing magic. 5. Baba Yaga, Slavic folklore. Baba Yaga is a truly iconic and ancient figure in Slavic folklore, a fearsome and enigmatic old woman whose character defies simple categorization. She is most often depicted as a hideous crone with a long, crooked nose, iron teeth, and sometimes a skeletal leg. Her home is one of the most distinctive elements of her legend, a hut that stands on muscular chicken legs and can move around the forest at her command, often turning its back to the visitor and facing the forest. She travels not in a carriage but in a mortar, propelled by a pestle, sweeping away her tracks with a broom made of birch twigs. Baba Yaga is a complex character. She can be a terrifying villain who devours the unwary, a capricious figure who tests the hero with impossible tasks, or even a benevolent, though still intimidating, helper who provides magical aid or wisdom, often after the hero successfully navigates her challenges. She is deeply connected to the forest and the wilderness, embodying the wild, untamed aspects of nature itself. Her ambiguous nature reflects the power of nature, both nurturing and destructive. She often serves as a gatekeeper to magical realms, profound knowledge, or the thresholds of initiation, representing the trials one must face to achieve spiritual growth or overcome obstacles. Her role in many folktales is to challenge the protagonist, forcing them to demonstrate courage, wit, and moral rectitude before granting passage or assistance. How was she known as a witch? Baba Yaga was known as a witch through her pervasive presence in Slavic folktales, where her magical abilities are explicit and central to her character. Villagers and heroes in these stories are well aware of her existence and her powers, even if they fear her. Her moving hut that turns on command, Izbushka, turn your back to the forest and your front to me, her unique mode of transportation, flying in a mortar, propelling it with a pestle, and sweeping away her tracks with a broom, her control over natural phenomena, commanding invisible servants like the white, red, and black horsemen representing day, sun, and night, and her ability to impose impossible tasks or offer magical items, like a skull lantern with glowing eyes, are all clear and consistent indicators of her witch status. She is not a human accused of witchcraft but a powerful, ancient supernatural being whose magical nature is inherent to her being and universally recognized within the folklore. Reasons behind her powers/status. Baba Yaga's powers are deeply rooted in pre-Christian Slavic mythology and indigenous shamanic beliefs. She is often seen as a primordial spirit of the forest, a guardian of the boundary between the living and the dead. Her hut is frequently depicted as standing at the edge of the human world and the underworld, or even a goddess of wisdom, death, and regeneration. Her powers stem from her intrinsic connection to the ancient, wild forces of nature, rather than from a pact with the devil, which is a later, Christianized concept not typically applied to Baba Yaga. She embodies the raw, untamed magic of the wilderness, and her challenges often serve as initiation rites, testing the moral and spiritual fortitude of those who encounter her, thereby granting them access to profound knowledge or transformation. 6. The Three Witches, the Weird Sisters. Shakespeare's Macbeth. While purely fictional, the three witches from William Shakespeare's tragedy Macbeth have cemented their place as legendary figures in the lexicon of witchcraft and Western literature. Often referred to as the Weird Sisters, from the Old English weird, meaning fate or destiny, they are introduced in the opening scene, setting a chilling and ominous tone for the entire play. Their appearance is disturbing and ambiguous. They are bearded, withered, and otherworldly. They deliver cryptic prophecies to Macbeth and Banquo, igniting Macbeth's ambition by predicting he will become Thane of Cawdor and then King of Scotland. Their most famous incantation, double toil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble, is synonymous with dark magic. The Weird Sisters are more than just fortune tellers. They represent the forces of fate, temptation, and the dark, chaotic undercurrents that can corrupt human morality. They don't directly force Macbeth to act but instead exploit his existing desires, preying on his inner darkness. Their manipulative nature and ambiguous pronouncements perfectly encapsulate the sinister and deceptive aspects often attributed to witches in the popular imagination. They symbolize the dangerous interplay between external supernatural influence and internal human ambition, serving as catalysts for Macbeth's tragic downfall and a profound exploration of guilt, tyranny, and the seductive nature of evil. How were they known as witches? Their identity as witches is immediately established through their eerie appearance, so withered and so wild in their attire. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. Their meeting in a desolate place amidst thunder and lightning, and their opening dialogue about Macbeth. Their ability to deliver accurate prophecies, their knowledge of Macbeth's future, and their use of a cauldron for brewing and scrying, double toil and trouble, fire burn, and cauldron bubble, are all explicit indicators of their supernatural powers. Macbeth and Banquo immediately recognize them as otherworldly beings capable of foresight and influence, even if they debate the nature of their power. Their title, Weird Sisters, links them explicitly to the concept of fate and destiny, commonly associated with figures of ancient magic and pre-Christian spiritual beliefs. Their malicious intent, as seen in their desire to torment a sailor for a trivial slight, further emphasizes their malevolent nature. Reasons behind their powers/status. Their powers are innate and tied to the play's overarching themes of fate and free will. They are not human practitioners who acquired magic, rather, they are personifications of the supernatural forces that influence human destiny and moral choices. Shakespeare drew upon existing Scottish folklore regarding witches, prophecies, and particularly King James VI's own intense interest in demonology and his book Daemonology. The historical context of real witch hunts in Britain, like the Northbrook trials, also influenced their portrayal. The Weird Sisters embody the year's fears about the malevolent power of witchcraft and its perceived ability to corrupt individuals and undermine divinely appointed authority. They represent a primal, chaotic evil that exists beyond human comprehension, capable of influencing events through temptation and suggestion rather than direct action. 7. Agnes Sampson, Scottish witch trials. Agnes Sampson was a real historical figure, a victim of the horrific Northbrook witch trials in Scotland in 1590 to 1591. One of the earliest and most sensational witch hunts in Scottish history. She was a respected elder and healer in the community of Netherkeith, East Lothian, suggesting she was likely a cunning woman or wise woman whose knowledge of herbs and natural remedies was sought after. Her accusation of witchcraft stemmed from a bizarre chain of events involving alleged attempts to murder King James VI of Scotland and his new wife, Anne of Denmark, through magical means, including raising storms at sea. Under excruciating torture, including the use of the witch's bridle and being thrown with a rope, Agnes Sampson confessed to a fantastical array of acts. These included participating in a grand coven with the devil himself, sailing the sea in a sieve with other witches, conjuring storms by throwing a cat into the sea, and attempting to obstruct the king's marriage. Her detailed, albeit coerced, confession was used as primary evidence to convict her and implicated many others. Agnes Sampson's brutal interrogation and execution by burning at the stake highlight the devastating realities of the historical witch hunts, serving as a tragic symbol of the innocent lives destroyed by mass hysteria, religious fanaticism, and the pervasive fear of the other during that era. Her case remains a chilling testament to the power of false accusation and forced confession. How was she known as a witch? Agnes Sampson became known as a witch through accusation during a period of intense witch panic, not through any voluntary identification or overt magical displays. Her status was determined by official legal and religious authorities seeking to identify and punish alleged sorcerers. Reasons behind this accusation. Reputation as a healer/cunning woman. Before the accusations, Agnes Sampson was known as a wise woman or healer, a common role in rural communities. She had knowledge of folk medicine and midwives' practices, which, while beneficial, could be reinterpreted as illicit magic when suspicion arose. If a cure failed or a personal grievance emerged, her practices could be easily cast as witchcraft. Association with calamity, specifically royal misfortune. The immediate trigger for the Northbrook trials was a series of severe storms that plagued King James VI's voyage to Denmark to fetch his bride, Anne. When these storms were deemed supernatural rather than natural, a furious search for those responsible began. A maidservant, Galis Duncan, was initially accused and, under torture, implicated others, including Agnes Sampson, in a grand conspiracy to harm the king. Political context and royal interest. King James VI was deeply interested in demonology and witchcraft, having himself written a treatise on the subject, Daemonology. When he became convinced that witches were plotting against him personally, his intense involvement and belief in the conspiracy magnified the hunt. Any confession implicating others in a regicidal plot was treated with extreme gravity and encouraged by the king himself, who even attended some of the interrogations. Torture and coerced confessions. The primary reason Agnes Sampson became known as a witch was the brutal and prolonged torture she endured. She was subjected to the witch's bridle, an iron muzzle with spikes, thrown, twisted with ropes, and deprived of sleep. Under such duress, she confessed to outlandish and impossible acts, including meeting the devil, sailing the sea in a sieve, raising storms by throwing a cat into the sea, and performing rituals with other alleged witches. These detailed confessions, though clearly coerced and fantastical, were deemed valid legal evidence at the time and were used to convict her and implicate many others, perpetuating the cycle of accusations. Societal vulnerability and scapegoating. Witch accusations often arose from existing social tensions, petty grievances, or unexplained misfortunes within communities. Older, poorer, or independently minded women were particularly vulnerable targets for accusations, serving as scapegoats for collective anxieties and calamities. 8. Marie Laveau, New Orleans Voodoo Queen. Marie Laveau, circa 1801–1881, was a truly iconic and influential figure, known as the Voodoo Queen of 19th-century New Orleans. Born a free woman of color, she became one of the most powerful and respected spiritual leaders in the city, bridging the worlds of African spiritual traditions, Catholicism, and French Creole culture. Laveau was renowned for her spiritual guidance, potent gree-gree, voodoo charms and amulets, healing abilities, and uncanny insights into human nature. She blended the practices of African voodoo with Catholic rites and imagery, creating a unique and powerful system that attracted followers from all social classes, from enslaved people seeking solace and justice to wealthy white aristocrats looking for love, luck, or revenge. Her influence extended far beyond spiritual matters. She was a hairdresser by trade, which gave her access to the homes and secrets of the city's elite. Laveau was also a devout Catholic, attending Mass daily, and used her voodoo practices often in conjunction with her Catholic faith. She was known for her charitable works, visiting prisoners and nursing the sick during yellow fever epidemics. While not a witch in the European sense of dark magic or diabolism, she wielded immense spiritual and social power, becoming a legendary figure whose legacy continues to draw devotees to her alleged tomb in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, seeking her continued blessings, assistance, and intercession. Her story embodies the resilience, adaptation, and spiritual power of marginalized communities in the face of oppression. How is she known as a voodoo queen, a form of witch/magical practitioner? Marie Laveau's reputation as a voodoo queen was built on her demonstrated spiritual efficacy, her strategic social networking, and her commanding public presence. She was not accused as a witch in a European witch trials sense, rather, she was recognized and revered for her unique spiritual authority and magical effectiveness within the complex social fabric of 19th-century New Orleans. Reasons behind this knowledge/status. Effective spiritual work and perceived results. People sought her out for a vast array of personal needs, healing illnesses, resolving legal disputes, influencing love affairs, securing employment, or enacting protection/revenge. When her gree-gree, voodoo charms, herbal remedies, or rituals seemed to yield tangible results, her reputation for spiritual power grew rapidly among her diverse clientele. Her ability to provide genuine help in a city often riddled with hardship was paramount. Strategic social positioning and intelligence. As a hairdresser, she gained unparalleled access to the intimate details, gossip, and secrets of wealthy white families. This seemingly mundane occupation allowed her to gather intelligence, which she could then subtly leverage, or simply appear to leverage through divination, to offer highly personalized, surprisingly accurate advice or solutions to her clients, further cementing her mystique and efficacy. Her intelligence and shrewd understanding of human psychology were legendary. Charitable works and community respect. Beyond her spiritual practices, Laveau was deeply involved in charitable activities. She visited prisoners, provided nursing care during devastating yellow fever epidemics, and offered support to the needy. These acts of compassion earned her immense respect and goodwill from all segments of New Orleans society, including those who might have otherwise condemned her voodoo practices. This broad community acceptance transformed her from a potential outcast into a figure of authority and reverence. Masterful syncretism. Laveau brilliantly blended elements of West African voodoo traditions, for example, spirit communication, elaborate rituals, gree-gree, with Roman Catholicism, for example, saints, holy water, attending Mass, praying the Rosary. This religious syncretism made her practices more accessible and less threatening to a wider, predominantly Catholic, population, allowing her to operate openly and attracting both black and white followers. She often used Catholic iconography in her voodoo altars. Commanding public rituals, she sometimes conducted large, public voodoo rituals, particularly at Congo Square, now Louis Armstrong Park, or on the shores of Lake Pontchartrain. These vibrant events, featuring drumming, dancing, and spirit possession, were captivating spectacles that showcased her power and attracted a large following, further cementing her public image as the supreme voodoo authority in New Orleans. Her charisma was undeniable. 9. Dame Alice Kyteler. Irish witch trials. Dame Alice Kyteler, a wealthy medieval noblewoman from Kilkenny, Ireland, holds the unfortunate distinction of being the first person in Ireland, and potentially one of the earliest in Europe, condemned for witchcraft in 1324. Her case is a complex web of familial disputes, accusations of heresy, and social anxieties. She was accused by her stepchildren from previous marriages of various heinous acts, including sorcery, poisoning her husbands, she had 4, and engaging in forbidden rituals such as sacrificing animals to demons at crossroads, using human hair and nail clippings in her spells, and having a demonic familiar named Robin Artisan. The prosecution was led by the zealous Bishop of Ossory, Richard Dildrade, who was determined to root out heresy and witchcraft in his diocese. While Dame Alice, with her wealth and connections, managed to escape to England, thus evading conviction and likely execution, her maidservant, Petronilla de Meath, was not so fortunate. Under torture, Petronilla confessed to participating in the alleged witchcraft and implicated Alice, leading to her being burned at the stake. This horrific event made Petronilla the first person in Ireland known to have been executed for witchcraft. Kyteler's case marks a pivotal moment in the history of witch trials. showcasing the early emergence of organized persecution against witchcraft and the potent mixture of religious fervor, personal vendettas, and social anxieties that fueled such devastating accusations across medieval Europe. How was she known as a witch? Dame Alice Kyteler became known as a witch through formal accusations during one of the earliest recorded witch trials in medieval Ireland and Europe. Her status was determined by a judicial process heavily influenced by zealous ecclesiastical authority and, crucially, by the testimony of her maidservant extracted under torture. Reasons behind this accusation. Family disputes and greed. A significant driving force behind the accusations came from her stepchildren from previous marriages. Alice was an unusually wealthy woman who had outlived 4 husbands, inheriting substantial property from each. This accumulation of wealth and frequent widowhood made her an object of suspicion and resentment, particularly from stepchildren who felt disinherited. Accusations of witchcraft were a potent legal tool in medieval Europe to seize property and discredit individuals. Zealous ecclesiastical persecution. Bishop Richard d'Iltrade, a fervent anti-heresy campaigner newly appointed to Ossory, was convinced that his diocese was rife with heresy and devil worship. He saw the accusations against Kyteler as a prime opportunity to launch an inquisition and enforce strict religious orthodoxy. His relentless pursuit of the case, even against the resistance of secular authorities who initially tried to protect Kyteler, demonstrates the growing power of the Church in defining and prosecuting witchcraft as a form of heresy. Emerging theology of diabolical witchcraft. Kyteler's case occurred during a period when the theological understanding of witchcraft was shifting. It was increasingly viewed not merely as folk magic but as a systematic pact with the devil and a form of heresy. The accusations against Kyteler reflected this. She was accused of having a demonic familiar, Robin Artisan, sacrificing animals to demons at crossroads, practicing forbidden rituals with human hair and nail clippings, and denying Christ. These specific charges fit the emerging, more sinister definition of witchcraft that would dominate later witch hunts. Social and gender prejudice. As a powerful, independently wealthy woman who defied traditional gender roles by managing her own finances and relationships across multiple marriages, Kyteler likely attracted suspicion and resentment. Such women were often viewed with apprehension in patriarchal medieval society, making them vulnerable to accusations that sought to undermine their authority and independence. Coerced confession and implication of others. While Alice herself, leveraging her wealth and connections, managed to escape to England, her maidservant, Petronilla de Meath, was subjected to brutal torture. Petronilla confessed to participating in the alleged witchcraft and provided detailed, though likely fabricated, testimony that implicated Kyteler. This coerced confession was crucial in validating the bishop's claims and solidified the perception of a diabolical conspiracy, directly leading to Petronilla's execution and casting a long shadow over Kyteler's reputation. 10. Sybil Leek. Modern witchcraft. Sybil Leek, 1917–1982, was a prominent English astrologer, psychic, and self-proclaimed witch who played a significant and pioneering role in popularizing modern witchcraft and dispelling its negative stereotypes in the 20th century. Born into an eccentric family with a long-standing interest in the occult, she claimed direct lineage to witches and lived a bohemian lifestyle. Unlike historical figures who were accused of witchcraft, Leek openly embraced the term witch and actively worked to educate the public about Wicca and other pagan traditions, presenting them not as evil or demonic but as legitimate, nature-based spiritual paths. Leek authored numerous books on witchcraft, astrology, psychism, and the occult, becoming a highly visible media personality, particularly after moving to the United States in the 1960s. She appeared on television and radio, advocating for a positive, ethical, and responsible understanding of the craft, often emphasizing its focus on healing, connection to nature, and personal growth. She famously refused to fly in planes because they were too materialistic and always carried a jackdaw on her shoulder. Sybil Leek represents the radical shift in the perception of the witch figure from a persecuted outsider to an empowered spiritual leader and educator. Her efforts, alongside others like Gerald Gardner and Alex Sanders, helped to pave the way for the contemporary resurgence of paganism and the growing acceptance of witchcraft as a diverse and legitimate spiritual path in the modern world. How was she known as a witch? Sybil Leek was known as a witch because she actively and publicly self-identified as one. This was a deliberate and radical choice that challenged centuries of negative connotations and persecution associated with the term. She didn't hide her practices but instead sought to clarify and legitimize them in the public eye. Reasons behind this self-identification and public recognition. Intentional redefinition and education. Leek was a key figure in the mid-20th century movement to reclaim and redefine witchcraft as a positive, nature-based religion, often aligning with the emerging Wicca, though she had her own distinct approach. She explicitly aimed to dispel the historical association of witchcraft with evil, diabolism, or harmful magic. Her goal was to educate the public that modern witchcraft was ethical, focused on healing, personal growth, and harmony with nature. Media savvy and charisma, Leek was a highly articulate, intelligent, reportedly with an IQ of 164, and charismatic public speaker and writer. Through her prolific output of over 60 books, numerous interviews, and frequent appearances on television and radio, especially after moving to the U.S. in the 1960s, she became a recognizable, even flamboyant, face of modern witchcraft. Her distinctive style, often featuring flowing black cloaks and her pet jackdaw, helped her stand out and attract media attention, allowing her message to reach a wide audience. Claimed hereditary lineage and personal experience, Leek frequently spoke of her family's long-standing connection to the occult and claimed to come from a line of hereditary witches stretching back to the 11th century. She also shared personal experiences with psychic phenomena and spiritual insights from a young age. This personal narrative lent a sense of authenticity and depth to her claims in the eyes of her followers and the curious public. Advocacy for paganism and occult studies. Beyond witchcraft, Leek was a passionate advocate for astrology, psychic abilities, and broader occult studies. She provided a framework for others to explore these traditions openly and responsibly, emphasizing ethical practice, do no harm, and spiritual balance. Her efforts helped build a community of like-minded individuals and attract new adherents to contemporary paganism. Changing social climate and counterculture. The mid-20th century, particularly the 1960s, saw a growing countercultural movement, increasing skepticism towards traditional institutions, and a burgeoning interest in alternative spiritualities. This more open-minded social climate, coupled with the repeal of the last Witchcraft Act in Britain in 1951, allowed figures like Leek to emerge publicly without facing the brutal persecution of earlier centuries, though they still encountered skepticism, misunderstanding, and occasional prejudice. These 10 legendary witches, whether mythical, historical, or symbolic, encapsulate the multifaceted nature of magic, power, and human perception across cultures and centuries. Their stories reflect deeply ingrained societal fears and fascinations, evolving through time to embody rebellion, wisdom, healing, destructive force, and spiritual liberation. They remain potent symbols, reminding us of the enduring allure of the unknown, the complex tapestry of human belief, and the ever-shifting definitions of power and autonomy.